So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Sliding Doors podcast. For those of you that haven't joined us before, it's a look back at kind of those sliding doors moments, those what if moments in your life, loosely based on kind of other familiar podcast kind of formats. Can't name names, obviously, don't want any copyrights. And we are joined by an illustrious guest this time, Katie Roberts. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Good to have you on.
Thank you. I've never been described as illustrious before. I love that.
Of course, you're illustrious. You're on this pod, so
True.
We'll kick straight into it. Obviously, as is tradition, the first category is all around kind of love and relationships. So, what's your kind of sliding door moment around that category?
So it's sort of, I've thought about this one quite a lot actually, because I've had a lot of dodgy romantic relationships, but I thought the most important thing about love is family. So my sliding door moment, and I don't think it happened in an instant, I think it was sort of a build-up of decision making, is probably deciding to move to Bristol, which is about 150 miles away from my mum. So obviously
where is that?
So she lives in Hertford, which is just north of London. And I moved to Bristol for university when I was 18, did 3 years there, and then decided to stay, and I'm still here now. And I think it's quite a big deal moving away from home and then deciding to kind of stay with it. And obviously it's had an impact on my relationship with my mum and my brother. And I often wonder, like, oh, I should probably move back. I should move closer to them. And it's one of those, a fine line between being selfish because I'm happy here, but also I should be closer to my family. I don't know whether you've got anything similar.
Yeah, and I was just going to expand on that, I guess. So what do you think has kind of kept you here? So obviously for the benefit of those that aren't Bristol based, like ourselves, what has kind of attracted you obviously to here in terms of, obviously it was the uni, but what has then obviously kept you here for obviously that time afterwards?
Yeah, good question. So it was a combination of things. I was in Bristol for uni, which I adored. But then a lot of so I did drama and creative writing at uni, you couldn't guess it. And all of my course mates stayed in Bristol. It was a really close-knit course. So it was a combination of staying where my friends were, and also just the culture in Bristol. I find it really amazing. Everybody seems really friendly and open-minded, and it aligns with my politics, which I won't talk about too much, obviously. And it's just a really warm place. And I think it's one of those things that you understand once you've been in a place. Great community spirit. I'm just really happy here. I feel like it's where I belong, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's the sense of community that kept me here.
And do you think has there ever been kind of that, not pressure is probably the wrong word, but in terms of that kind of, is your mum, your brother kind of ever asked you about coming back?
No. So my mum's amazingly supportive. I know that she would want me to move back so that I was closer to her, but her priority is my happiness, which I think takes a certain kind of love, doesn't it? A selflessness. And even that makes me want to move back more, because I'm like, oh, she's so amazing that she's that selfless to just want me to be happy. But ultimately, my career is here, my friends are here, my house is here. So yeah, I don't think I would ever move back to Hertford anyway, because it's a small town. And everybody always talks about London being sort of where you go for your career, but I grew up in London, so I'm not that mesmerized by it. To me, it's just busy and horrid, whereas Bristol for me is like the perfect combination of slightly metropolitan but also friendly, community based, good pubs. It's got everything and better, I think.
And I think that's, I agree. So obviously I'm kind of Bristol born and bred, and I've never really understood that, like you say, the drawl of London for some people. And I guess because I've obviously grown up in Bristol, Bristol's similar vibe, obviously on a much smaller scale, but a similar vibe in terms of being that kind of hustle and bustle of a busy city. So I've never really understood that draw to London, but I get, kind of that's other people's kind of draw, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're right, that kind of that is a really good example of a sliding door moment, because obviously it's easy to kind of stay with what you know, isn't it? To kind of stay in that area. But you kind of took that leap, obviously, to go to uni, to do something different, and then obviously it's led
And
you
it's a
to where you
series
are.
of moments, isn't it? It wasn't like a snap decision of, oh, shall I go back or shall I stay? Because there's obviously that month period of, right, I need to find a house to move into after my student accommodation. And it just kind of happened. That's why I found this concept for your podcast so interesting, because when you have to actually pinpoint those sliding doors moments, in the moment, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like something that's happening. And then when you look back, that's when you're like, oh, I could have changed that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's kind of how this came about, I guess, in terms of to peek behind the curtain a little bit. It became an idea because there were a few of those moments where, like you say, you stop and look back and go, actually, that was a big kind of moment, in terms of, it was certainly much bigger in the future than it was at the time. And then you kind of go, maybe other people have thought about this, and it's an opportunity to have a conversation. So that's obviously why we are where we are now.
It's like the butterfly effect, isn't it?
Absolutely. So kind of moving on to kind of topic 2, and it's all about kind of career and work. So what's your kind of sliding door moment around career? I'm interested to kind of, because so for context for those listening, I know Katie was kind of via LinkedIn. I would say your career is not what you studied at uni. Would that be fair?
That is very fair, yes.
So obviously, just if you want to give a little bit of background in terms of kind of what you are doing, and obviously then, your kind of sliding door moment.
Yeah, so funny you should say that, actually, because I think that drama is quite closely linked with sales, because it's where I get my confidence from, I guess. But for context, I am the sales manager for a company called Noisy Little Monkey, which is a marketing agency and a delightful place to work. And I absolutely love it. And funnily enough, my sliding door moment is deciding to take the job at Noisy Little Monkey. So I used to work in recruitment. Big sigh. I absolutely hated it. Now, that's not saying that recruitment isn't a viable career. I think it suits some people, and it serves people amazingly. I've got really close friends who still work in recruitment, and they are amazing at it. It just wasn't for me. I didn't.
It suits certain people, doesn't it? It suits certain people.
Yeah, definitely. And the industry that I was recruiting for was something that I wasn't very passionate about or didn't really know anything about. So it felt a little bit like, for lack of a better expression, flogging a dead horse, because you have to sell your candidates. And I loved a lot of the candidates, but then also sell the roles. And it's just, how it works. And I didn't like it. The company weren't that supportive of stuff. And well, for me anyway. And so in my head, I needed to get out of any kind of sales environment. I hated sales. I hated feeling like I was lying. I just wanted to help people or do something creative or use my performance skills, or, I just was a bit like, what do I do? And John, the founder of Noisy Little Monkey, was on my list of people to cold call and like sell candidates to, essentially. And I called him one day, and I hadn't heard of the company. Didn't know what they did. It was just on my list. I called him and I got through to John, which apparently is impressive, which we'll go on to. And I did my spiel, and he was like, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, you do that.
So he was like, we had a lovely chat, and then he went, right, I don't want what you're buying. You're delightful, but why don't you just fuck off and enjoy the sunshine? It was a really nice day. And I just left the call feeling so delightful that somebody had spoken to me like a human being. And he wasn't rude. He was just like, I know that you're doing a job. I don't need what you sell. Act like a human. And I was like, wow, I love that man. And then a few weeks later, they were recruiting for a business development person. And I was like, oh, I could probably get that job.
Yeah.
And I love that company, but it's sales. So, oh, and I decided to go for it and I got it. And it was hands down the best career decision I've ever made. I'm so happy here. So I learned that it wasn't sales that I didn't like, it was the environment that I was in, because I believe in what we sell here. I'm allowed to sell how I want to sell rather than cold call and read a script. And, so yeah, that was a good sliding doors moment where I think, God, where would I be if I hadn't gone for that?
And there's just a few bits there. So I agree. I think recruitment is for certain people. I've certainly done parts of it in my career, and it's not ever been anything that I've necessarily enjoyed. I have always kind of enjoyed probably the more people side of it than the sales part of it, and selling a job that I don't believe in. But hearing people's stories, experiences, love that part of recruitment. But I couldn't do it all the time. I'm always glad that it's been part of my job, not my job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. You certainly have those experiences with people throughout your career that make a big difference. And like you say, that call, it was just a random cold call. You could never have met that person any other way, and then that has changed your opinion of like that person. It's made it, it's kind of then resonated. That is that ripple effect, isn't it? To go, they've then got a job coming up. Oh, I'm going to apply for that job because I remember that guy. That is absolutely kind of what this was all about in terms of, if you hadn't have taken that, that chance, that call in the first place, and then obviously applied for the job, got the job. Where would you have been? Do you think you would have stuck in recruitment? Do you think you would have or were you that burned out with it you may have done something completely different?
Yeah, I was that's a good term. I was really burnt out with it, and Noisy Little Monkey drew me in. So I used to sit on my lunch breaks and read their blogs after I had that call with John. I mean, it sounds like I'm in love with him. I'm not. I just really, it's rare that you get spoken to like a human. But yeah, I just had to work for this company, when you're just so determined. So I think it would have taken something similar to draw me out, because the money was really good and I had really lovely friends there. It was just, I felt really stagnant is the right word to use. I couldn't see myself progressing in it. And I didn't believe that you could love your job. I heard so many people say, find the job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I was like, that is fucking impossible. Like, why would we get paid for doing something that we like? No.
And I think that only and again, I've heard that a lot, but I think it only captures like a certain percentage of the kind of workforce in terms of like, if you train and do something. So for example, like hairdressing, for example, you've obviously trained to do that. You're interested in it. I think it captures like that's just a small example, but I think that phrase is based on those people that train for something, get that job, like that is them, isn't it? And I think there's then the majority of the population that do a job that is loosely based on something they want to do, and then you don't enjoy it 100% of the time. You do kind of work more to live than live to work, as the old saying goes, isn't it? So I think
but I think I decided what A-levels I was doing when I was about 15, 16, and I didn't know how to bloody make a lasagna then. Like, you don't know. I don't know why that's the mark of intelligence, but you make these choices so young, don't you? So I knew that I wanted to work in marketing when I was working in retail, just after uni, because I was writing the product descriptions for the stuff that we sold in the shop. And I was like, oh, I'm quite good at making these things sound fun. Maybe I should go into marketing. But I didn't know what marketing was when I was 14, 15, picking my A-levels and GCSEs. So it's interesting that you say that, like training to love something, because if I did now what I wanted to be when I was 8, I'd be Ariana Grande or a vet, or, I'd be some performer. And I guess that's how I utilize LinkedIn, is by doing videos and trying to make sales fun. And I think I do. I have fun.
and that's certainly how you to add context for the listener, I guess that's certainly how you came up on my radar in terms of kind of those LinkedIn posts. And obviously we can kind of for the kind of YouTube guys, I guess we can share your LinkedIn profile in the comments and stuff when we post the video, so everyone else gets the full experience. But yeah, that's certainly how I came across you. And like you say, LinkedIn can be very busy. It's very good in terms of kind of that networking tool. That's what it's for. But you know, there is a huge number of people on that website, and you need to do something different to kind of stand out. And obviously that's what you're doing. That's what you do every day. So, you know, I would just say, kind of keep doing what you're doing on that front. You're right in terms of that kind of that retail bit. Kind of like you say, I think everyone who does retail ends up kind of using it as the bit that leads them to the next thing. I'm not saying people don't stay in retail forever, but like you've just given your example there, you worked in retail, it led you to marketing. I worked in retail, it's led me to kind of HR. I think it can add so much value, but people don't necessarily see the value of working in retail. It's, you know, it's an quote unquote easy job.
Oh my God, it's one of the hardest jobs.
Yeah.
God, yeah, I think retail and recruitment. So my mum's head teacher at her school that she worked in said to me once, I was working in the shop and I didn't like it, but I was sort of okay with it, you know. And she said, you have to have jobs that you don't like to know what you really want to do. And that's interesting about what you were saying about kind of training to love the job, because you take stuff from every job that you have. Absolutely. So I loved the writing part of retail and I loved the customer facing part. And the same with recruitment. I loved the same as you, hearing people's stories and helping them and just piecing those bits together of previous jobs that I loved and getting rid of the shit that I didn't like is kind of how I've ended up here.
And it does. You're absolutely right there. You kind of add a piece each time until you kind of get to where you want to be, doesn't it? So I think that's an absolutely great share. And we're gonna move on now to our third topic, and this one is always the one where I'm a little bit nervous because obviously it's kind of the wild card one, and I'm very much now in your hands. So the floor is yours.
So this one, I found this one quite tricky, but so I was going to talk about how I never learned to drive, and I should have, which I'm going to next year, but then that didn't really lead to anything else. Okay. So the biggest sliding door moment for me in terms of pretty much everything in the past 2-3 years, again, it relates back to John Payne, who I'm looking at. I'm angry. He's had such an effect on my life. When I first started working at Noisy Little Monkey, John saw that I was listening to a band called While She Sleeps on my Spotify.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like, oh, you'd like Natalie, who used to work here, ex-colleague of Noisy Little Monkey. And so Natalie asked me if I wanted to go to a gig with her, like in a few weeks' time. I'd never really met her. And I was a bit anxious about it because I think I'm quite good at making friends, but I always get a little bit nervous before. And I think that's really natural.
And it's quite it's quite a unique set of it's quite a unique environment that like you say, I'd feel quite comfortable that I can make new friends, but I'm not sure I could make a new friend at a gig where we both like the person, like the band, and therefore obviously, but then when we have like different experiences with that band, like we'll have different kind of feelings about different songs. And yeah, I'm not sure I would be comfortable in that situation either.
And also, like, is that the only thing you have in common? Your love for this band? Do you mosh? Do you stand at the back? How do you act with each other at a gig? So I was thinking all of these things, as I do. But I decided to go, and Natalie is now my best friend, and we have a podcast together, and she helped me through lockdown. And she's just one of those people who, I don't want to get too soppy, but I feel like she definitely came into my life for a reason. She has made me be much more sympathetic and see the best in people and be a bit more courageous in doing stuff on my own and for myself. And I truly believe that Natalie was meant to come into my life. And I think that moment of like, no, I'm just going to go to this gig because what's the worst that can happen? She's probably going to be a lovely person and I'm going to make a new friend. And now that's led to like so many lovely experiences in my life, and I've got a friend for life out of it. So it's just a really nice kind of just do it, as Nike would say, moment.
And that is, like you say, is how that kind of ripple effect of that one cold call led to John, led to your job, led to Natalie. What a set of circumstances. That's incredible.
I know. I owe John a lot, but it's, yeah, you're right, because no one would know that they were going to lead to each other. It's just, that's just what happened. And something else like that might have happened had I not gone down this route. But there's always a series of events, isn't there? Whatever way you go, and this was mine, and I'm very lucky.
Do you wanna give your podcast a shout in terms of, you mentioned you and Natalie do one? Do you want to give yourself a shout?
Yeah. So we've got a podcast called Just a Girl Pod, and it's about intersectional feminism in the alternative music scene. It's something that we actually were talking about on our first date, if you will, to the pub gig. We were saying how it's quite a gatekeepy scene. If you're wearing, so for example, if I wear my Slipknot t-shirt, I get asked all the time, name 3 Slipknot songs. And it's like, just because I'm a girl, it doesn't mean I don't listen to heavy metal. So it was just something that, and that's obviously a very small element of it. But yeah, it's called Just a Girl Podcast, if anyone likes both of those things. But we're on your podcast.
We can absolutely pop a link in the comments and stuff on my
legend.
when we post this up, and we'll kind of get you a shout out for that. That's absolutely fine.
Legend.
That brings us to an end. So thanks for your time today, Katie. If everyone can kind of like, share and subscribe like normal, I'll be bugging you until you do, so make sure you're kind of subscribing, and thanks again.
Thanks, Rob. It was really nice to chat to you.